Good evening. A long, long day, you all. Thank you for showing up in our continuing archive after all. It's been so, special for me just remembering, helping jog those incredible voices. So much appreciate everyone who's been staying with it, bearing with us in our incredible, commemorative, engaged, insurgent dream world. Anybody having some interesting insurgent dreams? Visitations in the middle of the night telling you to create a new place? Anybody got some ideas? Okay. Take it down below the border. Check all the weather and see what's not going to be a total, jungle would be great, but not if there's no respite from the heat, desert, so on. Anyway, so glad you're all on board. It feels very special to us who have been staying with it, and I'm so appreciate Jeffrey Petherbridge. I just want to say he's been the incredible collaborator with all this, a real buddy in the enterprise, in the caper, as we call it. I hope we're doing the good job. We're pretty much aligned, would you say?
Most days.
Well, he's got a quick temper. I'm very chill.
That is absolute fiction. On the internet. She'd be putting that on wax.
I weep all night, but I'm chill.
Yeah. I'm the Libra moon in this relationship. Buenas noches, mi gente. Welcome to our first faculty reading of the final week of Summer Writing Program 2024. Many of you in this room have been here in this room all going. Some of you are new, and there are some friends, comrades, neutrals on the internet joining us. We welcome you too. We're going to have 5 readers, an extravaganza this evening. First will be Rajiv Mohabir, and then Sarah Riggs, and then MAIREAD CASE flying through the Highway 36 traffic to arrive on time. Always arriving on time. And then we'll have an intermission, then Isaac Jarneau, and then Laird Hunt will close out the evening. Son of Naropa. MAIREAD will introduce Laird. Addie will introduce Isaac. I will introduce Sarah. Shannon will introduce MAIREAD, and Rachel will start us off with an introduction for Rajiv. For those of you just joining this festival and school hybrid, it's our 50th year in this economy, as the vernacular has it. And so we have something of a celebratory mode and spirit that has attended us. We're also sort of giddy because we're spending 12 to 15 hours together, and it's been quite hot the last couple days. So there is a certain type of ecstasy and a certain type of celebratory spirit that inhabits and moves through this room and our bodies, but we will also admit to trying to cultivate a double mind and a double heart that is a mind and a heart of solidarity with our comrades in Gaza and in Palestine, who continue to suffer the most unrelenting, absolute assault in every way possible. That of weapons, that of water, that of food. There is not one aspect of Palestinian life that is not under constant and absolute assault right now. We know it, and we send our loving hearts and solidarity to them. That will be all from me right now. Rachel.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you again. Rajiv Mohabir was born in London, England, to Guyanese parents. He grew up in New York City and in the greater Orlando area in Florida. While in New York, working as a public school teacher, he also produced the nationally broadcast radio show Coffee House on Juice Punjabi from 2012 to 2013. He received his PhD in English from the University of Hawaii and is an assistant professor of poetry in the Department of English at the University of Colorado Boulder. He is the author of the poetry book The Cowherd's Son from Tupelo Press and The Taxidermist's Cut, Cutlish, and most recently, Whale Aria, all from Four-Way Books, as well as the memoir Anti-Man with Restless Books and countless other chapbooks, articles, and teaching resources. When I asked Rajiv how I should introduce him tonight, he said that all I should say is that Rajiv Mohabir is a dumb bitch. It's true. This is the kind of language that inhabits zones of queer comfort, but quickly finds itself tempered in academic or industrial or straight company. And I knew almost entirely certainly that I wouldn't actually say this, and certainly not within the confines of an SWP introduction, a genre that all of us at this point in the program know incredibly well. It's a form that requires a certain degree of not unwarranted reverence. But as I continued to think about what Rajiv told me to say, I had a hard time thinking of anything more reverent than being a dumb bitch. There are two significant definitions of dumb at play here, and one, I think, that answers or even undoes the other. Who among us hasn't, regardless of our tolerance for witnessing violence, a horrifying expectation and a position we are seemingly ever increasingly required to occupy? Who among us hasn't experienced the first definition of dumbness, so horrified of the ongoing catastrophes we bear witness to in Gaza and Sudan and here too, that we are rendered, even for a moment, voiceless? It is to the great advantage of capital and empire to take away from its populace the ability to speak. And the tools of this dumb making, terribly effective, will and will always be barbaric. But there is a second definition of dumb in which we might find a different possibility, one full of queer potential, which is, to borrow Margaret's language from this morning, like imagination in which action may shift subtly and where time may go backwards. All people, me among them, who at one point or at all points found themselves distracted or uninterested or incapable of holding the needless and empty information presented to them in hostile anti-student learning modalities. That's right. Have known what it means to be called this kind of dumb. But it isn't that we weren't thinking, it was that we were thinking differently, approaching the problem from an angle that seemed unconditionally wrong to our peers, but was nearly always driven by a kind of curiosity and openness that allowed a real seeing. This kind of not knowing was knowing. In Rajiv's poem Cascade, a whale eats and then poops, and the poop drips to the bottom of the sea, where the nitrogen it deposits nourishes tiny creatures who not only filter carbon from the water, but go on to feed Manhattan skitter, sardines, herring, mackerel, triggerfish, capelin, fusiliers, and sand eel, whose bodies go on in turn to feed the cetaceans, whose kindred intelligence has made them a constant favorite of mankind, though we do them great harm. The result of this cyclical, ongoing feeding frenzy, Rajiv tells us, is a shimmer of scales raining to the floor. Underwater, sight curves. Beneath you spirals a galaxy of fish. This whole other system of being exists on the other side of the boundary, knowable only by those dumb people who dare to see from another angle, and so literally stick their heads into a cloud, this spiral galaxy full up of whale voice. May we all be dumb bitches, absent and incisive both. May our questions and our not knowing fuck up this whole awful project, our daydreams and our imagining, granting us some other shimmer of a possibility other than the ceaseless, dumb striking death hum of empire. Please join me in welcoming my dear friend Rajiv Mohabir to the stage.
To be that dumb bitch, where am I going? Is it here? I'm ready? Okay. Thank you. Oh my God. Thank you so much for that introduction. How incredible. You know, trust Rachel to make everything into, a searing, striking wonder. Wow, I want to be that person that you just introduced. Thank you. Wow, so incredible. Thank you also for inviting me into your community. I'm so happy to be here. Jeffrey, thank you so much for inviting me, and Sarah also for asking me to teach with you. It's been a wonderful 2 days, filled with so many questions of my own. I'm going to start with a poem that I was originally going to have published in an anthology of ghazals by some press in Chicago that I won't name. The anthology was called Nour Mélange. And Nour in Arabic means light, and mélange in French, of course, means a mix. And so they accepted this poem initially, and then the editors read it, and then the publishers read it, and they said, we will take it out. And I said, if you don't have room for this poem about Gaza, then you have no room for any of my work. This poem is called Palestine. Do you turn away from this genocidal pace in Palestine? Is your heart that void of space for Palestine? Israel has the right to defend itself. I heard people cry out, old traumas triggered as they deface Palestine. Look, this is not a Jew, Muslim, or Christian matter, but of you not seeing humanity in the faces of Palestine. Yes, you are complicit. America refuses ceasefire, supplies bombs for the Israeli army to erase Palestine. Gaza, Rafah, from the river to the sea. No, wait. Football is on. Taylor and Travis have more place here than Palestine. Didn't your God, your prophet, your king learn wisdom from the same city? Why starve and destroy all trace of Palestine? Israel, America, settler colonies, land of the brave. No one will be free until we are all free, and we free in good faith Palestine. Aaron Bushnell of the US Air Force self-immolates in protest, says, I will no longer be complicit in genocide. Free Palestine. How many Gazan children ages 0 to 17 have burned since October 23? Al Jazeera keeps pace with Palestine. Am I repeating Palestine too much for your liking? How about Gaza? How about genocide? How about you fucking embrace Palestine? Rajiv, how much time do you spend editing? Why write poems when every 15 minutes a child is killed in Palestine? Thank you. If one of the things that I am obsessed with outside of the political and, well, actually, there's only inside of the political, and the citation or the whale is the folk song. And so, my reading tonight is going to blend all of these kind of threads together. I'm going to begin with a poem that walks through the various places that I've lived as an immigrant, as a migrant to this country, with parents with roots in South America and ancestors with roots in India. These poems that are called Whale Story talk about the religious traditions of all of these spaces that I am from or that I have lived in. And we start out with an epigraph for the poem Matsya, which is the fish incarnation of Lord Vishnu. And it's from Ramanand Sagar's Krishna. He made these like serial television programs of Hindu mythology. He says, "And having sat thusly, I will guide you across oceans. Don't pack grains for this voyage, pack folk songs. If you capsize, your lungs will seize up, catch fire of salt and sputter. It's not my fault demons steal Vedas from your mouth as you sleep. If you forget your prayers, will you float? Breathing air, I come to point out Manu's escape. All about you, drowned men's arms reach up to grab you, to drag you, to beg you to cool their hunger-whitened tongues. Their fired iron and steel hooks will scald your hide, wrought of undying sun. One day, your children will crack coconuts, grind chutney from the tropics' plankton bloom, and beckon demons to their gold. Tie your vessel to my horn and offer garlands to Varun, your own name, a mantra to the god of exile, the ruler of life." Baki Kujira 2. O phantom in calcium, queer apparition, picked to the ghost. O wraith god of bone, is it due to microplastic, the hunt, or radiation that you rise up from the grave to unsettle rivers and tide, harrowing and intent to prophesy? Fish and birds, warped and misshapen, attend you. Plastic gouges their guts, rotting as midday albatross, drying conjoined as gray whales in Baja. Every living intestine fills with radioactive nuclides. O Kujira, O ghost whale, forgive me. Forgive me my toothbrush. 3. Leviathan. Canst thou fill his skin with barbed irons or his head with fish spears? Job, book 41, verse 7. O God of Abraham, Isaac, of Jacob, I have piked this monster through the nose, lassoed its tongue with rope, and carved its flesh into Bible shape. I've seen the mane transform from coral to crimson, gallons and galleons of gore, frothing in harpoon and fluke thrash, the final sputter of life as hellfire. You crush mighty heads with one blink, O God of eternal resource. I am your servant. Your name be praised as the walls of Jericho tumble into dust. 4. Palawa. Hano ka Palawa noho ikai. Born is the whale living of the seas, the Kumulipo, written by Her Majesty, Queen Liliuokalani. So sit proudly in your museum room, your people will come for you soon, written by the poet laureate of the occupied nation of Hawaii, Brandy Nalani McDougall. Who controls the Palawa, carved into a tongue and strung about their neck with braids of human hair, is true Ali'i, a ruler who controls the corpses of beached whales. They possess the tooth ivory, this kinolau, this carved Palawa, one bodily form of Kanaloa, giving strength to speech, tidal force to decree. Yet today, stolen and stashed, Nihole Palawa remain behind museum glass as American sonar pulses out. The Navy drives melon-headed whales to scrape tonnage against fringe reef, bleeding from ears to wither on the most beautiful beach the world over. I shuffle my feet in Waikiki, in its gold, my skin roasting its greed. A bleached coral bites my heel. Whose place have I taken? Against wave crash, singing one song, tropic birds and pigeons without breath, now white, now kea. 5. Yunus. Then the fish swallowed him while he was blameworthy. Al-Quran 37:142. Nothingness thrummed with it from within. Rahimhullah. May God be merciful. A jinn in the heart of the whale. I begged the seamen, heft this body, hurl me overboard. My prayer a cord of light. But first, I must atone. Stomach acid must scald. I must come to face dusk, swallowed whole. I must write the poem where I admit running away with the neighbor boy, packing a bottle of gin and condoms. I must admit my failures as a son. I left my father alone, without an heir. I never used the condoms. I break my name into two, Maha, Bir, holding on to Bir, the part that means semen. Thank you. Yeah, so many traditions. I kind of want to now turn my attention to like the epistemology of being a dumb bitch. Just because, you know, as of the 20th of this month, I am officially divorced. Which means she's just entered her hoe phase. And I am bottoming all over this world. It's amazing, people. And I feel like in the spirit of Allen Ginsberg, I can say this and read this poem, which I will dedicate to his memory. And it's actually a sonnet. It's called Anatomy Lesson. And there's an epigraph, of course, from the Bible, because the Bible. Where are the men which came in to thee this night? Bring them out unto us, that we might know them. I'm not like this as a teacher, people. I really am not. It's like, I get on stage, it's a different world. Megoptera noviangulae means big-winged New Englander, though the largest was hooked in the Caribbean Sea. Whale mouth lines run high, though blowhole crests prevent flooding between gasps. Diving into night's sky mirror, they arch caudal peduncles, coupled with the prominence of a dorsal fin. Whalers once called them hump back. A man devoted to his 2-inch deep, walnut-sized center can only enter one kingdom that turns to salt the wayward. The Hebrew word amora means deep, bend, over. A hymn gifting for copious water, to know, as in to fuck, to prostrate before Provincetown. True story. Yes. Okay, I have a couple more poems that I want to read to you. One of the main focuses of this book is I've taken the mathematical structures of humpback whale song and turned them into a poem form that I could use to drive into the sunset. And what I will read for you now is a poem called Cultural Revolution. And one of the things to know about this is, like, in the book, you'll see there's like a diagram that breaks it down. There's a study in 2003 made by Eduardo Mercado and Gary Pock, in which they looked at the ways humpback whale song repeat, use units, and riff off of one another in what we as humans understand as rhyme. To me, this was like ripe to pluck for poetic form. Cultural Revolution. In 1966, having become familiar with the song of the East Australian humpback, Michael Node heard one whale singing a new and totally different song with new phrases and themes. In 1997, this novel song took over. By the end of the season, virtually all the humpbacks passing through this area of Australia were singing it. And this is an epigraph from Whitehead and Rendell in their book, The Cultural Lives of Whales and Dolphins, published in 2015. It's a brilliant book. Instead of rhyme, I use assonance, so forgive me this human aesthetic choice. How pleading cries overleap oceans into rivers of sound scientists deem non-human revolution mystifies. A lone soloist lights the seaboard in new tones, a sonic blaze to streak swells, to sow new shanties before he forges a life worth its poems. His voice haunts night oceans in silver, intoning dagger dialect, though white faces insist. Speak English here. Write universal themes. My minor scales queer a nation. My hands teach by drumbeat. I know you fear tongues like mine. What arias are spells knell? Believe in America, Bhojpuri, Hindi, Urdu, Farsi, Arabi, rise. आ सखा, हमार संग भजन बजाओ. So the last poem that I'm going to leave you with is another poem about immigration, and it's called Why Whales Are Back in New York City. Did you know that whales have returned to New York City? Oh my God, people go whale watching in Queens. Hallelujah. Why whales are back in New York City? Anyone from New York? Okay. Oh, a couple of you, okay. After a century, humpbacks migrate again to Queens. They left due to sewage and white froth banking the shores, from polychlorinated biphenyl dumping into the Hudson and winnowing Menhaden schools. But now, grace. Bodies of song return. Go to the seaside. Hold your breath, submerge. A black fluke silhouettes against the Manhattan skyline. Now ice beats doors down on Liberty Avenue to deport. I sit alone on orange A-train seats, mouth sparkling from Singh's roti shop. No matter how white supremacy gathers at sidewalks, flows down the streets, we still beat our drums wild. Watch their false god statues prostrate to black and brown hands. They won't keep us out, though they send us back. Our songs will pierce the dark fathoms. Behold the miracle. What was once lost now leaps before you. Thank you all so much.
Sarah Riggs is a writer and artist born in New York, where whales have returned, where she is now based after having spent over a decade in Paris. Little brag. Before directing 6 Lives, a Cinepoem, she produced the Tangier 8, the Cinémathèque de Tanger in Morocco, which was also screened at the Berlin Film Festival and Tate Modern and elsewhere. She's the author of 7 books of poetry in English: Waterwork, Chain of Minuscule Decisions in the Form of a Feeling, 60 Textos, Autobiography of Envelopes, Pomme Granite, which won the 1913 Poetry Prize, Eavesdrop, and most recently, the Nerve Epistle. She's the author of the book of essays, Word Sightings, Poetry and Visual Media in Stevens, Bishop, and O'Hara, and has translated and co-translated 6 books of contemporary French poetry into English, including most recently Etel Adnan's Time, which won the Griffin International Poetry Prize and the Best Translated Book of 2020. She is director of the international arts organization Tamaas, which focuses on earth arts justice, film, and an annual poetry translation seminar, and has, in the past, been a collaborator with us at Summer Writing Program in developing the Amiri Baraka scholarships. She is a member of the bilingual poetry association Double Change. Sarah has, in addition to being a producer, a fundraiser, activist, artist, she's also been a teacher at Pratt, at NYU in Columbia, and here at the Summer Writing Program. She holds a PhD in literature from the University of Michigan. I think of her as a friend. In a different summer, in the great age of paper, in June of 1869, Emily Dickinson wrote to Thomas Wentworth Higginson, "A letter always feels like immortality to me, because it is the mind alone without corporeal friend." It is the great genius of Sarah's work within the epistolary mode that she often evokes both the grammar of lyric intimacy, a mind for address, correspondence, and sometimes elegy, and the present absence of the body, of the corporeal friend one touches or remembers touching. All is touching, nothing is not touching, she writes, and in that loop and play, it's not a sense of immortality that is evoked, but something of the absolute nonetheless. To be human is to be subject to or in conversation with the absolute, especially at this hour in this summer of the Capitalocene, where personal and species extinction insist to be thought of. You can see clearly, she writes, in breathing sometimes, the earth is not whole. And while the poems are often haunted by the predicament of being split as desiring mind and dying body, they hold open, or rather with the force of instinct, like a gesture from a dance or a drawing, a light upon, not easily defined by the binary of mind and body, as she writes in this letter to Snow. Can I come into you now? It snowed in the inside of my body. We are lofted now by a third, an energy between us. I love how Sarah's writing and other works with time and feeling seek and find the possibilities of address and correspondence as an energy between us. Please join me in welcoming her back to this energy between us.
Wow. Thanks, Jeffrey. Friend, I want to dedicate my reading tonight to Fadi Judah, Palestinian poet, translator of Mahmoud Darwish, The Butterfly's Burden, exquisite book, and he's written and published since October 7th a book called ... Fadi Judah. Closer? Okay. And I want to raise a toast to the lovers. In this case, Eleni Sicilianos and Laird Hunt, who fell in love here 30 years ago and are both here. Wonderful writers, teachers, parents, human beings. We love them. So I'm going to read first from Lines, which was written during the Trump presidency. It's coming out with winter editions in 2015. No, 2025. And it may have the subtitle, A Survival Manual for a Trump Presidency. We'll see. I hope not. October 30th, 2018. Then again the ends of land, twirling amid a deranged crowd, soporific melodies and quicksilver, touching the curve of the lies, frozen removal of a keen sense, migrant thoughts, needs not later. She heard you back there versing. There were several deliveries of insight. Something tightened the protuberance, willful sadness absorbing the rain, to pick up and hold in there a mandate, a duck, 2 pens. If we repeated it dimensionally, lick to the flavor of dismissal, quaint arias inflecting the mood. It erupted from the sides that way, give answers and gate. The younger hallowed be night. We wished it on you to imagine indulgent sieve, let through meaning, tenacious in the remarking, to line up in a circle, testing it, quarantined, sudden release, disease. What was the telling? Regrouped, foreclosed, catechism, motley, loss, swaying, actual minutes, you toward the can. If it could be regrouped to the mellow, dethawing districts, it would take at least that. Dismantled, getting it sorted, jumble that way, again, but differently. Some kind of mango-flavored rind needs along one railroad track, ripples of grief in the eyelids, rivers, tides, why we call them bodies of water, hurtling about. Hold yourselves, beating hearts. Whether we like it or not, we are together. No answers in the newspapers. Syndrome of those who care too much. This book is dedicated to Lynn Haginian, the late Lynn Haginian, wonderful poet. January 1st, 2019. The rain had amended it in fossil fuel, and the soul turned back from life. Over there behind the shelf, rich rinds, a precious flourish of tangerines, you to the kilometer of miles, smiles, mainly quickened by the pulse of terrain, lush solutions to a ceviche arrival, merely demeanor, how to the tongue, crackling fissures into matcha. Some reason overturning the rest break, wave repetitions along bees and baby insects, these sick days making themselves known. January 2nd. Turn upon affirmative X chance, trained to wail outwards, tickle the assumptions of Q, tear at the range of notions, emotion F, torn in at the capital. Some other letters scattered and regrouped. It was what we deliberately hoped, saturninely wishing in the Hirashika owl. A tear suspended there for a while, ranged over the suspicious bridge, rarely catered to the embryo howl, and then furious, mossy ways. Q, and again, remarkable. It would have to be the river house. One of my family members had a breakdown while I was writing this book, so that's in there too. If anybody wants to consult on these issues, just let me know. January 8th, the assemblage of emotions added up to a solid object we could buy or not, wrestle or wrestle forth. Others lined up to see, and you got in line. Some mistaking it for ornament, rose or shell, the quick of concentration, there. Perhaps like what swirled out of any person, from and with body, and with it, very much so. Animals, even trees. I contradict myself. You won't be able to buy it, and it is not solid anyway. Okay. Now I'm going to read from this manuscript that I'm calling Syllables for Survival. Political love. In size like a tear, the middle ear can't hear you. Poet? A question. Funnels clear through space. Wrinkles in your left palm's future. Creative. Hearing right? Gather, says Cecilia. Interweave fingers with Omar. After a flood. Sleeveless, tenacious, deep into spring and all this concatenation. Efforts don't fix it. Insect dead at the vote sign. 8-foot dry wells wait. Get a boat, says he, with a wide grin. We poised here in change, no change zone. 2 marriages. It's wonderful teaching with Rajiv, by the way. Pause in the middle. Ask doves not to weep for us. Give love to strangers. Name the pills you take. Prolong the dream as it flees. A severed member. Say you needed that, what to communicate, and when to just let go. Nights. Henna hand holding, pause in place. Ask how. Watch earth around sun. Oud music, crucial. Sing the day in 8 whispers. Sleep for a while. Turn page, start over. Here we are still, poised in disappearance, tears in. Could be tears in. May 17th, 2024. You listless, in pain, cicada, dead, dove, warbler, Palestine, jasmine, damaged consciousness, what travels backward, violet frenzy. Come to a resting point, don't point, Overhead, hell, a copter's heart beats. Syllables for survival. Blue moat song, change, tell, healing sun, round Cecilia, hope flies through oil drops. One wish or longing, oxygen would bind us now. Please loose the answer. Gather up the doubts, release the toxic parts. Breathe, stir together, live. I'm really moved by all the students here. I'm looking forward to the books that you will write. And the way you will nudge us out of disaster. And especially Malvika Jolie, who traveled here from New York for this week. Watching the ants' eyes, it rained on the time. We went inside the hour, asked peace for ourselves. How large disaster, how much smaller each of us, bending to the news. Instinctually, whether to run away first or run through running. Among plants native to New York, questions dangling, goldenrod next to aster, answering the bees, petal, tremor, light, present, greenish, capital, plant the stones here. Grasshopper collides with hazy city skyline, forsworn roof garden. Survival journal, a cacophony of floods and droughts, memory of a duck, thing with rain behind, deer, coyote, lightning bug. Go, chemicals, go! The thing with feathers ravels down the beaded walls, spelled with an H-O-P-E. To Omar. Sparrows remain here, conversing with each other, not knowing sorrow. Swallows surrendering to drafts of wind up there. Our breaths can glimpse them. It was a kind of window into the soul here. You measure it there. Painting. The sun arranges the room, turns the dust motes, tells air how to be, comes back each day, corners our thoughts of over there, here, perfumes our stillness, speaks to indifferent dispositions, yellows space, turns the graphite round. Broken Paradiso, haikus. 7 beads of earth viewed through multiple spheres. Where is my guide, Emily D? Sharp, tender threads of affection slip the heavens, from which brittle trees snap the soul twigs there. Give us this light. At his voice, from step to step, wheels. In this 8th heaven, they thread through sun thoughts, how brightly keen, demanding, reaching for the skies, a rivered time, stones, and though I cannot move you, I will to the left. Take down this book and harbor thoughts of moving through remembrance of you. We do not have the final vision. A time of war. Silhouette of tree and sliver of moon above, crevice of violence, snowing mother's tears. We remember the present, seconds of small screens. Sorrow, wilderness. Let's walk out together now, foot by sun, by blood drop. Two broken haikus. Let me into rain, quarrel over alphabets, a star behind grief. This side massacre. Who decides who lives? Sun, don't watch our hearts. Alive. Strip the wind from words, said the room to the window. Bay leaves raining tears. Go where you are not. Say it. Sound it. Become here. There relay the tongue. Gather the furling. Hasten the breath to the door. Revolving heart beat. Thank you.
Dr. MAIREAD CASE, a quick note on doctor. Shortly after we became friends, she said, don't call me doctor, it's just MAIREAD. And I said, I'm not calling you doctor because I think it's gonna boost your ego. I'm doing it because it boosts mine when I can say, doctor, I have a question for you. So with that, Dr. MAIREAD CASE is special. She's special for so many reasons. She specializes in so many important things. MAIREAD, rhymes with parade, is a writer who publishes widely. She authored the novels Tiny and See You in the Morning, both put out by Featherproof. I read See You in the Morning prior to my arrival at the Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics. The book was a sign I was headed to the correct place. That book also inspired me to draft a book of my own. And I asked MAIREAD to act as my thesis advisor, a role she fulfilled with a brand of patience and brilliance only possessed by a true specialist. I could not have completed my thesis without her stern correction, sisterly guidance, and inspired Spotify playlists. I look forward to finishing my book, hopefully under the continued specialized gaze of the good doctor. She teaches English full-time to 8th graders and teaches at the Denver Women's Jail. MAIREAD is a poet. Her chapbook, Tenderness, available from Meekling, communicates the faith that she has in poetry, even if, in her words, a poem isn't the same thing as detox or a good meal or time with your love or reparations, but still the faith is there in her poems. It is written that faith without works is dead, and MAIREAD fucking works. She's a legal observer with the National Lawyers Guild, and she volunteers for community response teams supporting queer and trans survivors of violence. She earned her PhD from the University of Denver, but it was her MFA from the School of the Art Institute in Chicago that fascinated me. Chicago's my hometown. MAIREAD came up in the same edge-of-the-century white indie culture, which I am a product of. She freelanced for places like Pitchfork and Punk Planet, the latter of which I read regularly. We went to the same shows and drank in the same bars. While we're yet to find an instance when we were definitively under the same roof at the same time, I'm quite certain it happened, and I'm sure I went home inspired by that Vogue genius I overheard wearing the denim jacket. It was in those days she also performed as a clown for children parties. The time she spent with those children prepared her for her work teaching 8th graders, just as her time as a clown prepared her for her work with Naropa students like me. I will be forever grateful for your guidance and friendship. I love you, Doctor. Please welcome a very special person, Dr. MAIREAD CASE.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everybody. That was so lovely. Thank you. These are great friends right here, too. Thank you, Anne and Jeff and Swanee and the PAC crew, and thank you for being here together, however you are. I'm honored to be here with some of my most favorite writers on earth. This reading is for my students who are included in that number. It's from a new novel that I'm writing. The quotes are from actual books, but everything else is fictionalized. To start, I am trying so very hard to want the world I have in front of me to want. My heart is beating so fast, I swear I could beat the shit out of something quite grand with it. That's Lauren Berlant and Kathleen Stewart. I moved to Chicago because I wanted to make art with my friends. I wanted to find them, my friends. We had always thought the world was ending, and especially then we believed it was ending because of ignorance. A dangerous position, teetering on narcissism, but not an unhealthy one for kids looking for work. I believed art could change worlds. Yours, if you were alone, which means if you didn't belong to the dominant world, and ours. On a fundamental but not always practical level, I considered us as one organism, like how moss softens noise or octopi store ganglia and 40 million neurons in each of their arms. I still believe this, that we are one and also not. I believe it for the young and therefore for all of us. I started writing this then. I lived in one room, painted chocolate brown with no closet and someone else's mattress on the floor. I left a bowl of pickled tomatoes on my desk, which was also a window ledge, and when I came back, there was a fly resting on the pulp. I wrote how I felt about the fly, meaning everything, and sent the pages to Chris because when we left school, we promised each other to be writers. I wanted to prove I never stopped. I never did, but I didn't need to prove that to anyone but myself. It is important to remember that more than one thing can be true at once. Because of my face, the Polish women would speak Ukrainian to me when I bought my jars and cans and dark bread on the corner. I would smile, put one hand on my heart, and say neighbor. Shortly after I moved to Chicago, a friend from school was diagnosed with cancer. I learned about this, also that he had died, when I picked up my phone, which was shaped like a travel-sized detangling hairbrush. I saw 2 other friends had called, one right after the other. It, meaning his death and also our awareness of it, had taken 2 weeks start to finish. There were lumps on my friend's neck, armpits, and groin. None of us could say more than a few sentences into the electric telephone air, and I realized I needed to sit down. I couldn't tell you if my body was actually preparing to fight or if I thought it might be, but I sat down. Oh my God, I said, and I was overwhelmed to be alive afterwards, after him. I was overwhelmed because I felt my friend turning into a symbol, which of course he wasn't, but I didn't know how to remember him otherwise. I believed through a combination of wild good luck, dead-ass love, and Midwestern Puritanism that nearly anything, at least everything I could name, could be fixed through love, patience, and expertise. However, because I could not bring my friend back to life, I sat down on the stoop. Some kid had drawn a hopscotch game on the sidewalk, 37 squares, and at the end, a square of blue sky. When Jay heard I lost a friend, he told me about a friend he'd lost decades ago to an overdose. This was a steady pillar of our relationship. Something would happen to me, and because we were the same person, it would already have happened to him, and he would help me handle it. I had not yet realized that because of who I am and what I do, one major task of my life will be to outlive people, or to remember, to mourn them, and then to leave carefully. Because I did not yet understand this, Jay's friend and mine locked into one. One beautiful, big, living, world-swallowing friend who worked in the dish pit and at Guitar Center, smelled bad, and had swirl cloud hair. Their faces became one holographic sticker, and our lives, illuminated by its flatness, were poorer now. As our lost men collapsed into each other, I began to collapse myself into Jay. It was not a conscious choice, but the path of least resistance. I believed suffering was noble, love strongest when displaced by a sweetheart's grief. I believed happiness was, as Willa Cather said, to be dissolved into something true and great. Jay had a thing he called Naked Photo Booth. It was a special invitation, extended to all kinds of people, though men rarely said yes. It was always the women, always later in the night when everyone had 3 glasses and hadn't yet ordered tots. Jay arranged his nights, he said, so no one felt tethered to him, though this was a lie because if there were drugs, he kept them. Once I accidentally put his lighter in my pocket and Jay screamed at me. He never carried my keys or tickets because, he said, if we had to run, we might not be able to run together. Every day of the relationship was laced with anxiety, which I thought meant I was important. I thought it meant I was special, the burden of the martyr. The invitation was to be naked in the photo booth with Jay. You picked how, shirt up, pants down, a thigh, that he would help you or lick you if you asked, and you picked who kept the photo strip. Jay swore that since it was a vintage photochemical booth, there was no other record. He said being naked was different than being nude and that he only ever got hard for girlfriends, so the invitation wasn't sexual. He said consent was powerful. Is it? Can a book transform our victimhood? Can I keep you safe? Now, I know that we can consent to situations without agency and that in these instances, children need protection. They need grace. I was a child. Jay is more than 20 years older than me. I could have been his child. Sometimes we want things we can't yet have. I want a world where it is safe for children to desire without being objectified. This world doesn't fully exist yet, which means our world is not my own. In large part, this is how I know ours isn't all there is. I never went in the photo booth with Jay, though I didn't care if other people did. Sometimes I think about my loneliness like teeth. When I was 15, the bones were pushing themselves through my face. It was loud and it really hurt. Teething is metal, but it is also a process, not an identity. Before the teeth erupt, their edges push along the gums from the inside like a baseline teasing a room. They push along for weeks and then they push through. Today, my loneliness sits inside my mouth, and most of the time it helps me. This is not the same as saying I'm grateful for it. Teeth make notches. They comb and latch and grip. Once I dreamed that all of mine fell out, and I thought, well, now you had that dream. People bite into breasts and necks and bread. During the first Selma to Montgomery March, a little girl remembers biting a hand that grabbed her in the crowd. Teeth are also little pieces of sharp, crackable, durable bone. They charm and they protect. They are small, hard, and true. Jay told me to write a book about him. At the time, I thought it could be romantic, a way for him to visit from the afterlife, a way to consent to all that. But I have always resisted living to write, the delusional authority of it, the lie of genre, and so I said no. He said I would do it anyway, and now I am. Jay also said the odds of me leaving first were far greater. I could get hit by a bus. I could fall into another love. I never wanted to go anywhere else, though. Not rehab, not the suburbs, only ever to Chicago. Jay, who does not have any color photographs from his childhood, smoked 2 packs of Camel Reds a day and said that whenever he was diagnosed with cancer, he would go to the forest and never come back. Now, I think my resistance was actually seeing myself as a victim, which is both a mortifying stance and a boring plot. I do not care much about justice for her. I do not think she is more important than you are. I care about story, and I believe in the power of it, of telling yours and having it heard, though I also believe that turning a confession or an admission into a show, meaning that every night you admit it and need to be believed again, is ultimately an unwell act. Of course, we do things that are unwell all the time. Purity at best is a lie, and at worst is not something human. What is clear to me, we must not let our stories turn us into monsters to ourselves. You can leave relationships, my therapist tells me. Only our higher power is unconditional. When Jay gave me a house key, he also gave me a list of rules, and it was understood, by which I mean I was told, that if I broke those rules, I would lose the key. This was not, he was careful to say, a punishment, but a requirement for anyone with access to his home. He presented as someone who believed in the tension between wild risk and absolute routine as something that could keep him safe. And at the time, I found that romantic. I still do. However, now I don't believe anything that isn't alive can truly keep you safe. Jay's power was his true safety, which included the number of people he'd seen naked, supplied with pro bono cease and desists, and given drugs. There were 2 locks on the door, and the top one was never used unless you needed to come back with a warrant. I remember walking through the city and feeling like with that key, I could never be lost. Death is in all of this. Death makes a new cosmology, writes Bayo Akomolafe. Death is not a black hole where things cease to be. What if, he asked, would it be like to treat grief as power, even our hopelessness as a form of decomposing and falling away that is sacred? I think this is different than needing pain to trust or mistaking pain for intuition. And I think, as Saint Chiron wrote, that many people in political power right now are afraid of death because it will take away their money and influence. This is why they are afraid of growing old. Ultimately, this too is why I have decided to never be afraid of these things. I made a blood pact with myself. Ultimately, writing helps me make sense of everything, and ultimately this is not a purely narcissistic process because I have the good sense to step aside when equity is at stake, though I suppose that is narcissistic too. We're better together. I write for me, I write for you, and hopefully we circle or rug like in Lucky Dragons Make a Baby. Hopefully we take space and transform it like the pearls and serpentine coating Kathleen Ryan's moldy fruit sculptures. Sometimes that yuck sparkles. Sometimes it makes a new shape. This is a hopeful process. I think a lot about the poem Elizabeth Bishop wrote for Buster Keaton. In it, she imagines a paradise, a serious paradise where lovers hold hands and everything works. I am not sentimental, the poem ends. Yes, risk joy, writes Louise Gluck in another poem. It starts, I did not expect to survive. Jay loved labyrinths. He loved the expanse and the collapse of them, how a container could be immense but also intricate. His apartment was like this, even beyond the shrine. On the top floor, which was where Jay spent most of his time, every wall was covered in mirrors or books. The futon in particular faced a full wall of solid mirror, which meant that if you sat next to each other, you saw yourself, the cat, anyone else coming up the stairs. He watched himself in it constantly, and I watched him too. In those days, I felt powerful but also invisible, so I started wearing brighter colors, chunky heels, glitter body spray. It was always lizard hot in Jay's apartment, and specifically stocked peppermint patties, Folgers coffee, cherry coffee cake, and cheese popcorn. Outside of this, Jay lived on cigarettes, cocaine, and cheeseburgers. Describing him feels violent, like pinning a beetle. Every surface was occupied or decorated, leaving no perceived emptiness, which meant I often emptied my head to compensate. I liked sitting in the rope chair where I could gently swing and also keep my back to the biggest mirror. Jay found most of his decoration in the alley or through people who broke up with him or split town. My favorite painting was a woman with green skin clutching poisonous-looking yellow flowers. Above the futon, chained into the ceiling, hung a preserved hammerhead shark, and to the left of it, facing the mural wall, was a dense crucifix, rescued from a church under demolition. Unlike my friends' rooms, which were hung with equally weird objects and found treasure, every object in Jay's home was symbolic, nostalgic, or imprisoned. I felt safe there because I felt nothing could change me, touch me, or bother me. The best way to escape a labyrinth, which means to get out of it, not to heal your trauma from it, is to keep one hand on a wall at all times. If the wall hinges on the side of your hand, turn at the hinge. Otherwise, ignore it. If this fails, you will have chalk in your pocket and can mark the places where you've already turned once. When you come to them again, take the other way. As long as you never choose a path containing two trails, you will eventually leave the maze. I think a lot about whether entering a maze can be seen as consent. As a kid, I never found them fun, on paper or on the playground. For fun, I practiced balance, speed, swinging high. I have more scars because of this. The cardinal truth is that consent cannot be given in an imbalance of power. I could not consent to a relationship with Jay, yet I continued cleaving to him because once we started, everything else fell away. The labyrinth was built to contain the Minotaur, who was not abandoned there per se because they were also offered children and virgins to eat. I imagine piles of bones, though maybe they ate those too, like vultures. The stomach acid of a bearded vulture is 100 times more powerful than the acid of a human, so much so that vultures will barf in self-defense. The Minotaur, who was created when Pasiphae donned a cow costume made of wood and cow skin and fucked a bull in a field, was imprisoned because no one knew how to handle them. They were the only one of their kind. Eventually, the Minotaur was murdered inside the maze, but I wonder if they didn't have peace before that, since they were finally alone. In the end, we are all we have. Thank you.
Okay, bueno. One more round of applause for MAIREAD and Sarah and Rajiv. Thanks to Charlie for tonight's wonderful ikebana arrangement. Let's take 9 minutes, 9 real human Earth time minutes, and then be back at 8:30. Home, 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 home. Home, 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 home. Home, 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 home. Those are about 15 poet minutes, y'all. Those were not 9 human minutes. That was straight up 15 poet minutes. Ann Waldman, last in the door. I see you in my eyeball. Here we are now, returned for the second half of our program, in which we will hear from Isaac Jarno and Laird Hunt. And now Addie.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. This is a real pleasure and an honor to be able to introduce Isaac here at Naropa. I first met Isaac Jarno at his apartment in Jackson Heights in the fall of 2022. I was new to New York City and was grieving the loss of the deep roots I had left behind in Detroit, as well as a relationship that had reached a devastating conclusion. Having never met me before, we only spoke once, briefly, on the phone. Isaac opened up their space to me with open arms. In our workshop that fall, the topic being grief and mourning, a small group of us talked through love, loss, and poetry over Isaac's dining room table, pictures of the late Bernadette Mayer at the center. We held each other in the space of acceptance and practiced letting go through writing, language, and conversation. Through Isaac's friendship, I have begun to find myself as a poet in relation to the rich lineage of New York writing, something which I am forever grateful for. Having studied with Bob Creeley and Jack Clark at Buffalo, being an inaugural member of the 3rd generation of the New York School, along with contemporaries such as Leanne Brown, as well as having written the definitive biography of Robert Duncan, there is perhaps no one better at mapping the genealogies of 20th century American poetry and poetics than Isaac. Isaac, however, is not just a poet, or rather, poetry for him is not the singular domain of the life's work of the poet. A gardener, mother, climate activist, ordained Christian minister, community facilitator, and small rodent rescuer, Isaac puts into practice the poetic precepts of truth-telling and compassion in all areas of life and with people from all walks of life, discriminating against no one. Isaac's insistence upon facing the disturbing truths of European colonization, the disease of whiteness, and probable extinction are testament to this poetic, spiritual, activist impulse. If we are to learn from Isaac, it requires we have the courage to turn inward, to face ourselves and our complicity in the mechanisms of destruction, and then to face the communities and the world which we inhabit and build alongside one another with compassion and justified righteousness. Isaac Jarno grew up in a self-described cow town outside of Buffalo, New York, and was educated at SUNY Buffalo. He is the author of the 2024 book, 4 Lectures, which everybody should read if you haven't picked it up already. I think there were some out there. And is the author of several collections of poetry, including Some Other Kind of Mission, Ring of Fire, Black Dog Songs, Night Scenes, and A Princess Magic Presto Spell. His biography of Robert Duncan was published by UC Press in 2012, The Ambassador from Venus. He has been a visiting professor at Naropa, Brooklyn College, and UC Boulder. Currently, he is a PhD student in theology at Drew University in New Jersey. Notably, Isaac is a minister at Safe Haven United Church of Christ in Ridgewood, Queens. He lives in Jackson Heights, Queens, with his teenage daughter, 3 cats, the occasional pet mouse, and a fish tank. Please welcome Isaac Jarno to the stage.
always the bright light up here. Amazing. Thank you so much, Addie. Very grateful to be here this summer. Very grateful to Anne, as always, for all these years of ups and downs, and mostly ups. I want to, actually, I should say, I want to thank everyone this week who either, let me say, I feel like I've been having this great experience of ego death because I've, first of all, just like hearing myself referred to for the first time in public as he about 12 times. I was like, huh, who is that? Who is that person? That was it's very, so if you were surprised, think of how surprised I've been in the last several months. I was like, wow, this is a new adventure. But yeah, I wanted to thank everyone who either has avoided me because they didn't know what my pronouns were, or who has asked me, oh, what's your name? My name's Isaac. Oh, are you a student here? What are you doing here? And that was like that sense of like letting it all go, like disappearing, right? And I feel like I want to honor that. I'm thinking of like Alan Watts has this great line where he says, you know, you have to think of the basketball, like you have to let it go, like, and then to the other guy and say to the other guy, have a ball, right? So I was thinking about all those other guys who started out in this space, in this row. I mean, Bobby Louise and Jack Collum and Anselm in that front row. I just was thinking of being out on the lawn on a 4th of July night with Stan Brackage and his kids watching the fireworks. And I can't think of a better place to be and a more interesting experience of understanding this evolving eternity of poetry and creative life that just keeps drifting off into the universe. So I want to read a poem by Allen Ginsberg about drifting off into the universe. It's called After Lelan. You know this one, I'm sure. It's true, I got caught in the world. When I was young, Blake tipped me off. Other teachers followed. Better prepare for death. Don't get entangled with possessions. That was when I was young. I was warned. Now I'm a senior citizen and stuck with 1,000,000 books, 1,000,000 thoughts, $1,000,000, 1,000,000 loves. How will I ever leave my body? Allen Ginsberg says, I'm really up Schitt's Creek. 2, I sat at the foot of a lover and he told me everything. Fuck off, 23 skidoo, watch your ass, watch your step, exercise, meditate, think of your temper. Now I'm an old man and I won't live another 20 years, maybe not another 20 weeks. Maybe the next second I'll be carried off to rebirth the worm farm. Maybe it's already happened. How should I know, says Allen Ginsberg. Maybe I've been dreaming all along. 3, it's 2 a.m. and I got to get up early and taxi 20 miles to satisfy my ambition. How'd I get into this fix, this workaholic showbiz meditation market? If I had a soul, I sold it for pretty words. If I had a body, I used it up, spurting my essence. If I had a mind, it got covered with love. If I had a spirit, I forgot when I was breathing. If I had speech, it was all a boast. If I had desire, it went out my anus. If I had ambition to be liberated, how'd I get into this wrinkled person? With pretty words, love essences, breathing boasts, anal longings, famous crimes? What a mess I am, Allen Ginsberg. 4, sleepless, I stay up and think about my death. Certainly it's nearer than when I was 10 years old and wondered how big the universe was. If I don't get some rest, I'll die faster. If I sleep, I'll lose my chance for salvation. Asleep or awake, Allen Ginsberg's in bed in the middle of the night. 5, 4 a.m. Then they came for me. I hid in the toilet stall. They broke down the toilet door. It fell in on an innocent boy. Ah, the wooden door fell in on an innocent kid. I stood on the bowl and listened. I hid my shadow. They shackled the other and dragged him away in my place. How long can I get away with this? Pretty soon they'll discover I'm not there. They'll come for me again. Where can I hide my body? Am I myself or someone else or nobody at all? Then what's this heavy flesh, this weak heart, leaky kidney? Who's been doing time for 65 years in this corpse? Who else went into ecstasy beside me? Now it's all over soon. What good was all that to come? Will it come true? Will it really come true? 6. I had my chance and lost it, many chances, and didn't take them seriously enough. Oh yes, I was impressed, almost went mad with fear. I'd lose the immortal chance. One lost it. Allen Ginsberg warns you, don't follow my path to extinction. I kind of would have happily just read that tonight, but I'm going to read a couple pieces from this book called Princess Magic Presto Spell, which came out a few years ago. I guess it came out during the pandemic. Oh, I want to take a picture for my kid of you guys. Let me put it on my, because she actually just doesn't care, but I'm going to send it to her anyway. Oh, good. Oh, look at that. Oh, great. Okay. Wait, let me get the light right. All right. Hold on. It's not. Hold on. The light's so weird. It's like it's going like it doesn't. All right. I got you guys. All right. Excellent. All right. She's gonna hate this. Thank you. This is so good for her to. She's just gonna, look at that. Okay. Terrific. Thanks. I'm going to read 3 little sections from this book. This is a long poem. I may have read little parts of it here some time ago, but it was written over about 12 years, the first 12 years of my relationship with my child. I think that there are some references here to all of us folks. So this is sections 7, 8, and 9. The section 7 is called the Derby Shuffle. That's my cow town, Addie, the Derby, New York. The Derby Shuffle. Teeming with life, a midsummer kitten, Mars hangs low over guns, rape, and great white sharks. Teeming with life, the sumac trees lighting Flushing Bay, rendered into death the angel Moroni. Teeming with life, roaches, fruit flies, ants, hairballs, ringworm, fleas. Dr. P samples elevated bilirubin from Graubens to Lederer, from Lurcher to Malenko. Teeming with life, an oval pig toe, an Arkansas fat mucket, a Cumberland monkey face. Over the road, Harvey, Jack, and Bob, Robert, Jess, and Stan, the dog days, and then rotifer. If you speak Chinese, press 22. Become a dementia swimming officer, a blue reeds Lou mask. Teeming with life, Samita Ben Mocha, a thing in a castle, in a Kafka story. Being in life, sound bites, iPhones, psyches, fussy German beekeeper, may you live in interesting times. With global liquidity funds, South African asparagus, with rigid bureaucratic behavior for God, Han, Hannah, and also for Bill Kushner. For emancipated, read emaciated in the Georgia pine woods, or a little boat in rainy weather under the drawbridge on Grand Avenue, the Metro Dong ferry. For Hopkins-esque, read urinalysis and a pear-shaped white lady crafted from the pelts of North American coyotes. Office Max, Copy Max, Furniture Max, the last days of the Standard Enzyme Company. Uniquely positioned not to miss Larry. Teeming with life, these sober engines dreaming, the last days of the rare full moon of Christmas Eve in Galesburg. For garage, read Carnage. My mother's hairspray, my father's aftershave, and Nino Scalia free at last. Starved on the frozen streams wander the water voles, with small Welsh feet, with sea trout Francis, with red maple buds. Teeming with life, the redolent eyes of firstborn seers and Lady Choppy wine. Teeming with life, a wild boar in an oak tree. For Tequila Minsky and Mr. Rojek and Dr. Berthoff Robert J. For Discord or current resident, 11 officers down. Thank you. Part 8 is called Sober Engines Dreaming. Back to the bear's berries and the mugwort fronds, back to the 32 red pansies and Ted Cruz's Heidi. Behind the industrial robot manipulators who love the world, whose sea surface temperature bears witness to devoted psychotic friends swarmed by Elmos. Yolanda Badley Bentley's Vagenda of Manicide, mixed hillside facing the garden dirt, while psychopathic witch lesbians scatter angels in their paths. Rhodonite, leopard skin, mahogany, obsidian. Eric Garner, Alex Nieto, and Mario Woods. The piñatas for chickens, and the old gray cat. The souls of Tom and Ray. Of Jack Spicer's Calvinism and my Starbucks carrots, only I will sing. Only I will sing of my reindeer. Only sparrows will drink the thawing pea. Part 9, thanks. Part 9, Trim Roses, Mary. Dust and spirit in the cavernous eyes of our dead cat help to immanentize the eschaton towards a fruit-based strangeness with the head of a girl with the snake of a body at the Erie County Fair. In the Synod of Dort, find a solitude, near the chessmen and the tax returns, where the llamas dream. In a luxury gay space communism, find a dead woods post-colonial guerrilla exegesis. In the mobs of vindicators, find the root fallacy of the music that can carry it. And for weird but true, read The World Tree. Read The Crows of Boulder. Read The Magpies of London. Read Archaic Tribal Garbage or an Original Christology. And then Jack, and then Bobby. And then Jeffrey's Bridge, and then Corbett's Ashes. In the funerals, dentists, divorces, in the brain masala and bima astrologers. Be a brilliant heliotrope in a flannel waffle hemp. Read the welfare queen's strawberry unicorn cakes, her bare Buick rusting. No ding-dongs, no sea gods, and more Toms outbound. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaac. I want to have a moment of appreciation, too, for the graduating class. Y'all are amazing. Yeah, your books are coming. It's an honor to introduce Laird Hunt, who is the author of 9 novels, including Zori, a 2021 National Book Award finalist. He is a 2024 Guggenheim Fellow, a former UN Press Officer, a current professor in Brown University's Literary Arts Program, Eleni's husband and Eva's dad. As a writing teacher, which I know because he was mine both here and at DU, as well as Eleni, thank you. Laird is concerned less with epiphanies, more with the drama and shape of empathy, awe, sympathy, beauty, history, and grief, as prime movers, but also powers that create crossroads and alleys, where he finds single gloves and blue cellophane packets, which he holds up to the light. He is an ambitious and moral writer whose work is always on time and in tune, whether to the dark of the woods or the pink and gold Indiana sky. His books are irises and opals, formally and essentially, and the photographs he takes are alive with kindness, wonder, and a sincere curiosity. They appear in his work as themselves or other kinds of frames. For example, a merry heart, which is of course something alive and in a chest, situationally, but also a drink in a small glass on the deck of a storm-tossed ship or a shout in a fiery room. It really is, right? See also grief as a membrane, dreams as quills, a scar like a door. Questioning these descriptions brings us closer to nothing short of our own humanity, which is never without wonder, even when we're so full of radium we glow in the dark. The greatest pleasure, writes Castigliano, does not consist in experiencing new things, but in savoring the infinite variation of what we already know. Laird understands the bittersweetness of this, whether it's in Paris or Indiana, which I think is the most powerful story any novel can tell or any sentence can show. My friends, the great Laird Hunt.
Thank you so much, MAIREAD, for that. And thank you to Jeffrey and to Swanee, to the extraordinary PAC crew. Special thanks to Ann Waldman for keeping it fierce and exciting for 50 years. And to Eleni for reminding me for 30 years that the work of the imagination is real. content warning for what I'm going to read. Humor, self, mostly mockery, and opinions that may be, but might also not be my own. This is called Heat. I was trying to tell this guy in the hotel bar what it was about the song Heat of the Moment that got me going to the degree that it got me going, which was considerable. I was trying to tell him how when those opening chords got shredded, something happened in me. I was trying to tell him that when Heat of the Moment came on the radio, as it did with surprising frequency of late, at least on the 80s channel on Sirius XM, which my daughter and I both liked, though she didn't love that particular song the way I loved it. Some part of me that couldn't speak said, "Here we go," and another part of me that could speak said, "Again," but not in a bad way. I was trying to tell this guy about those parts of me that those can't say but say and can say and say parts of me that were set off when the song got going, and the guy was all, "Yeah, yeah," and maybe even "hell yeah," by his expression, I mean, though he might have actually said some of it, said a yeah or a hell, the way you do. And I was trying to tell him about how much work the drum did behind the guitar and behind the opening lyrics, and how it almost didn't matter what was being sung. And I tried to tell him about how the best songs were all like that, no matter how much you fetishized great lyric writers, how much you boringly loved Leonard Cohen and thought everyone else was an idiot. The great songs by supergroups took you to another zone. You with me? Yeah. A place where the what something says doesn't matter anymore, where the what something says doesn't matter at all, and maybe never did, though if the lyrics were good, if they did matter, as they did with Heat of the Moment, that was cool too. I was trying to tell this guy how the first time I had heard Heat of the Moment, I was spending the summer in Taipei with my father and stepmother, and it was hot, and it either rained like fucking fire hoses, or blew the trumpet of its sun like a hurricane flamethrower, or a supernova carnival or something. And I hung out at the house, or played basketball with kids in flip-flops, with everyone present getting in on the game, so that there were 20 or 25 of us. And how when during this summer, Heat of the Moment would come on the radio generally once a week on Casey Kasem's America's Top 40. My 14-year-old self registered that I would be thinking about that song for years to come. The years have passed, I was telling this guy. They have passed and passed and passed, I was telling him. And while the disco hotspots never held any charm for me because I was too young to have done any good in them, though of course I had listened to plenty of disco, especially disco by ABBA and disco by the Bee Gees and disco by Donna Summer and by Earth, Wind, and Fire, I did know something about hotspots. I had done some good in happening revival spots in hotspots in London, and school gym hotspots and Moose Lodge hotspots in Indiana, and house music hotspots in Strasbourg and Paris, and techno hotspots in Holland and New York, and punk hotspots in Longmont, Colorado, where I went to hear Screeching Weasel and danced in my first mosh pit, and discovered that it was true that punks were the best people ever. And now I was telling the guy, or trying to, none of those places were places that held much charm for me, because I had moved on, sort of. I had moved on, and I hadn't, was the long and short of it. I tried telling him, and he nodded and said, "I'll drink to that." And this is what we did. We held up our beverages and drank. And then he played with the top of his beer bottle, and I looked down at what was left of my highball, and there was a break in the music, which had been excellent. Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, Smokey Robinson's, classics all. And I was wondering what might get played next, hopefully some Aretha Franklin or Tina Turner, maybe their hits from the 80s, even though that would change the vibe considerably. And I was thinking about a bar in Japan, in the city of Kumagaya, in the prefecture of Saitama, which, after a while of my dedicated frequentation, had put on Paradise City by Guns N' Roses whenever I walked in, and deciding if I should try telling the guy about that, when he said, "That line about how your looks are gone and you're alone, though." "Yeah," I said. "Hits you like a brick, like a fucking bazooka," he said. "Oh, fuck yeah," I said. I had often thought about and been moved by that line, which my partner likes to mock for its schmaltziness and its misogynistic commentary. For it is, according to the music video, about a woman washed up at 25 or something, lifted up by the Ferris wheel of the 70s, and in the 80s speedily smashed down. And if she, my partner, were to sum things up with an emoji, it would be the vomit emoji, the vomiting a lot emoji, which of course, the thought came to me, I had done my share of. I had vomited in Miami Beach, Florida, and in Bloomington, Indiana, and in different cities in Japan, and on the Lower East Side of New York, where after smoking pot and drinking tons and being a little sick to start with, I once vomited onto a manuscript, not mine, on the turquoise floor beside my bed. I had vomited onto a manuscript, not mine, the one I had agreed to read, on the floor beside my bed in the late 90s as my partner, unaware of the horror I was perpetrating, slept beside me. I thought of trying to tell the guy. But he was chatting with the bartender, a young woman in a polo-style shirt. He seemed to know about a sporting event that was set to happen, and it was not a sporting event I was interested in, so I did not listen. I had liked the guy whose manuscript I had vomited on. I had liked him, and he had entrusted me with his manuscript, and I had read perhaps a third of it and had it on the floor beside the bed so that I could read more of it, and when I finished, give him my thoughts. And then I vomited on it, and it was a lot of vomit, emoji-level vomit, so that was done. There was no way I could tell the guy whose manuscript it was that I had vomited on it and asked for another, because he was a guy of real feeling, who took things seriously and read signs into postures, actions, and expressions. And it would not have mattered to him that I had overindulged in multiple substances, plus had been sick to start with. All that would have mattered to him was that I had vomited on his manuscript, a novel in progress, and that would have been the message, the sign from the universe, that the fellow aspiring writer he had entrusted his work to had read 30 to 35 pages and then barfed on them. Talk about some fucking heat of the moment, the guy said, thinking about what he had been thinking about after his brief exchange with the bartender regarding the sports event. And I said, yeah, for sure, thinking about what I had been thinking about. And then our postures shifted. He leaned forward a little and I leaned back. And for a long time, he was trying to tell me about how when he was young, he had wanted to be a musician. And how even though it hadn't worked out, certainly he wanted to be clear because he hadn't had any talent, none whatsoever. And he wasn't just being self-deprecating, though more or less the same lack of talent had not stopped some of his bandmates from continuing on and on through endless unfortunate and ill-advised gigs across the decades, so that now they were men of advanced middle age with dry, shoulder-length white hair and notable paunches and berets or ball caps worn backwards, who played together at farmers' markets on Saturday mornings and in coffee houses on Sunday afternoons. Even though this hadn't been his fate because he had gotten down off the no-talent train at the second or third stop, he felt he owed a great deal to his early desire to be a musician and maybe someday tour the world and play to stadiums full of people. That such a specific desire with an artistic core had paid dividends in all kinds of ways, had really opened him up to creative possibilities in his personal and professional life, and had also helped him in his amorous pursuits. He smiled, and I smiled back, because it was clear that even though he had a few years on me, we shared some serious fucking worldview, a state of affairs that, far from being frequently the case, was worth celebrating. Therefore, in short order, there were fresh drinks on his tab before us, and leaning even farther forward, he was trying to tell me how the line in heat of the moment about "your looks are gone and you're alone," which had been followed by "how many nights you sit beside the phone," had always in his mind been lines about himself. He had been through a bad breakup shortly before the song aired, and he, for his part, knew quite a bit about disco hotspots. God, yes, he did. And for a long time after the breakup, he had waited beside the phone for a call that to this day, even though he was married to the loveliest guy in the world and had 2 kids he would commit murder for, some part of him still hoped would come. And so when Heat of the Moment was released, he immediately purchased the 45, and it was fair to say he was trying to tell me that it became the anthem of his despair. We drank to that, actually smash-clinking our beverages. And I thought of many other times I had smash-clinked beverages over the years. And he must have too, because then for a while he was trying to tell me about miscellaneous episodes of camaraderie from the surprising number of years after giving up on his musical ambitions and leaving the regretted relationship behind that he had spent as a member of the Maryland National Guard. There was a comical sergeant and lots of card games. Someone had been covered from head to toe with Betamax porno tapes as he slept, etc. Probably because I was on my 3rd drink, plus I couldn't quite connect any of this to the story of the breakup and the role Heat of the Moment had come to play in it, and the phrase anthem of despair, which I had a feeling I wouldn't soon forget. I spaced out a little. Are you with me, bud? Hell yeah, I am. No, you're not. And then he laughed and stopped trying to tell me about those episodes, which he allowed had been launched into because the breakup story still quickly got too hot for him to handle, and he had felt the need to leap off elsewhere, which I said I understood, because I did. And he took a sip of his beer and asked me what I did. as in what I did in life. And I said that I taught, and that, well, I also wrote a little. And while usually when I told them that I wrote, people's eyes almost immediately glazed over and their mouths grew strangely stiff like the opening gambit of rigor mortis had been played, this guy's eyes did not glaze, and his mouth did not grow stiff, not even in punitive reaction to my minute or two of spacing out about his time of, yes, totally dull-ass hijinks in the Maryland National Guard. Instead, he leaned back and asked me what I wrote, and I leaned forward a little and said, novels. And he said, published? And I said, yes. And he said, what kind of novels? And I said, I've never been able to answer that question very well. And he said, try. And because he seemed authentically interested, I said that while it probably wouldn't be very satisfying for either of us for me to attempt once again to traverse the minefield of lowercase past trauma and try to say what kind of novels I wrote, I could try to say what it was I'd been hoping to get close to in writing them. Do you mean your influences? More like my inspirations or my aspirations. I like that. So then I tried for a while to tell him about the not quite beginning of Moby Dick by Herman Melville, where Ishmael has left behind the opening stuff about meeting Queequeg and going to church, and the Pequod is heading out to sea, and the water surrounding the boat is like a great electric explosion field of beauty and horror and possibility. But then that was all I could think of, beyond a 1-minute film made without a camera by Stan Brakhage called Mothlight, and a very short piece called Fleurette Africaine, which could be found on Money Jungle by Duke Ellington, until I rallied and added the middle sections when the mood really settled in of just about any of Marie India's novels, the mind-fucking last few chapters of Hurricane Season by Fernanda Melchor, the entirety of Annie Arnaud's books about her mother and father, the ending crescendo of Absalom, Absalom by William Faulkner, and the last 3/4 of La Ciénaga by Lucrezia Martel. Oh, and the army dancing scene in City of Life and Death by Lu Chuan. I haven't seen it. You really should. That scene's on YouTube. It's an easy search. Or just watch the whole thing. Noted. What about you? Me? What do I want to get close to in my life? In what I do? Yeah, I already told you I own paint stores, right? Right, okay. And it seemed like he was thinking about it and that he might try to tell me. Only his phone buzzed, and he fished it out of his pocket and looked at it and raised his eyebrows and said he had to go. We shook hands, then clinked empty beverage receptacles with a laugh, and I tried to tell him how much I enjoyed talking to him, and he tried to tell me how he hoped we might cross paths again. If you're ever in Philly, definitely. And I watched him go, then started to think about what I might do next, how I might go out for a walk, really try out the streets of downtown Houston. It wasn't that late. Or more likely go back up to the room and see what was on cable, because cable, once so important when I traveled, had become an experience that was very distanced from my life which was full of Netflix and Hulu and the Criterion channel, bien sûr, when suddenly the guy was back. He tapped my arm and snapped his fingers. I got it. Got what? I thought you had to go. I do, but then I realized what it was. And then without sitting down, he was trying to tell me about the dance walk scene that opened Saturday Night Fever, a film that he and his long-ago love had gone to see in the theaters several times. He was trying to tell me about the way John Travolta, wearing his flared slacks and handsome shoes and swinging a carnival paint can, long before things get complicated and ugly in that movie, dance walks down the streets to the sound of Staying Alive by the Bee Gees. He dance walks without doing any more dancing than holding himself well and walking to the music down the bustling Bensonhurst Street, and checks out a pair of shoes that are exactly like his reddish ones, only green. He also checks out a woman he passes and eats 2 slices of pizza, one stacked on top of the other. His shoulders are broad, his pants are snug. He surveys his surroundings, is interested but not too interested by what he sees because he is cool. He is cool and jauntily, but also naively, almost ever so slightly vulnerably, asks a shop owner about layaway and puts $5 down on a shirt he wants. His heels clack on the sidewalk and the paint can swings. His hair is lustrous and his silver medallion shines in the sun. That's it, boom, heat of the moment. Stop the movie there. Yeah, can you see it? Just about. Can you dig it? I think I can. Anyway, that was me. I had that leather jacket. I bought one for my boyfriend too. Oh yeah? He was wearing it when he dumped me. I used to see him afterwards wearing it while he kissed other people. Shit, man, right? But I don't care about that. It's that walk, that music, New York 1,000 years ago. It was good, you know, to be young. He made a c'est la vie expression and gave a c'est la vie shrug, winked, clapped me on the shoulder, and then I sat there for a while, maybe even for a very long time. Thanks.
One more round of applause for Laird and Sarah, Rajiv and MAIREAD. This thing doesn't stop tonight. Tomorrow. No, the rest, yes. Tomorrow night. Swanee Astrid, Kelly Crumrye, Jalynn Chapman, Andrew Schelling, and Margaret Randall. We hope you'll join us. The rest of the evening is yours.